Howdy, gang. Welcome to episode 181 of the Daily Dope. I am going to actually be reviewing, giving you a bit of a how to play as well today on with Armageddon War from my friends over at Flying Pig Games. It is a near future war game and it's very, very interesting. So without further ado, let's get down to brass tacks because the Daily Dope is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back again as your host here at the Daily Dope, presented by thegaminggang.com, which I happen to be the Grand Poobah. So, things are a little different today. If you were wondering what happened to yesterday's show, I actually pinched my sciatic nerve. Yeah, not good. I'm still feeling it today. But thankfully, it isn't like the... Gosh, it happened about 3 years ago. Kind of threw my back out and hit that sciatic nerve, and I went down like a shot. I went from standing to bam on the floor on my knees, and ever since then I still have some issues every once in a while. So I wasn't feeling too hot. I was in quite a bit of pain, so I did not have a show yesterday. So sorry about that. Anywho, not doing some news this week. Doing things a little bit differently. I know there's people out there who really dig the news as part of the Daily Dope, and I get that. But I'm not doing news, especially today, because I'm going to be doing this review of Armageddon War. We're going to go into some detail. I'm not going to go into all the minutia about the game. But it is going to take a little bit of time as I explain some of the aspects of it, talk about things that I really like, things that are very interesting, kind of unique, or at least unique to, say, wargaming. We don't normally see in wargame titles. So that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. So I do also want to point out, next week, a week from today, is actually my birthday. I'm bouncing around, maybe taking the week off, or maybe taking Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off, because I've kind of been at this like since late December. So, and of course, there was the break when I had the heart attack, of course, and then of course there were breaks when I went to the various different conventions and that. But I need a little rejuvenation, I think. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. All depends. I mean, I honestly have to say that I am waiting for a review copy of Axis and Allies and Zombies from Avalon Hill, and I think there's probably going to be some interest in checking that out. So if that's supposed to come out next Friday, so it all depends. I know there's a copy coming. Actually, we're doing our live charity stream for Extra Life on November 3rd. We are going to play Axis and Allies and Zombies during one of the 2-hour blocks, and I should have a copy of that game to give out to whoever happens to be the biggest donator during that block. So just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so I know a lot of people are tuning in because they want to check out Armageddon War, which this is a big game. This is a big box, big hefty box. Armageddon War is from Flying Pig Games. It's designed by Greg Porter with development work by Mark H. Walker. Box art is provided by Zachary Smith, and map and counter art is provided by Shane Logan. This game is for 2 players. There are solitaire aspects to this. I will talk about that when we kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. It is for ages 12 and up. Disagree on that. I will mention that in just a moment. Plays in 60 minutes and up. The and up is very important to keep in mind because it's going to be depending on the scenario. Armageddon War is available now, and it does carry an MSRP of $100, but it is on sale through Flying Pig Games website for $100, or I should say $80. I was going to say it's on sale for $100. No. It's like, what am I talking about, dummy? It's yeah, the MSRP's $100 and it's on sale for $100. Duh. Anyway, it's on sale for $80. And I'm telling you, you'll get a lot for your $80 right now. So what we're going to do is let's move on over to the other camera real quick. And I'm going to actually zoom in too. But just to kind of give you an idea, you're going to have the Armageddon War rulebook. And this is one of the mounted maps, mounted board, I guess we could say. It is single-sided. It's not dual-sided, but it is double this. It is double the sides. So this is folded in half at the moment right now because, to be honest, if I try to unfold it, I don't really have enough space. So I got it folded up here to make things easier. Just kind of give you an idea. So this is the other mounted map, and I will open this up, kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here. So that's one side. This is the other side as well. So a lot of different terrain, which I was kind of interested how there's, I'm thinking, okay, you know, because this is supposed to be a near future conflict, and it is in the Middle East. It's supposed to be, it's called Armageddon War, although I think it's kind of funny that in the rule book, it's constantly referred to as Geddon War. So I'm kind of like, okay, so I understand you're trying to, you know, shorten it up, but still, you know, calling it Geddon War as opposed to Armageddon War, you're not really shortening it up that much. You could have called it AW in the book. But taking a look through the rules here. Now, I did a pretty in-depth unboxing of the game. But what's basically going on is it's supposed to be, you're assuming that there's been some sort of probably nuclear exchange between superpowers, and things have pretty much gone into the toilet. And the US and the Russians aren't center stage in this. Not because, for one, it's Middle East, and it's, I would say this is probably supposed to be like 10, 15, maybe 20 years in the future. And so what's going on here is they're battling for the limited resources that are still available in the Middle East. So you're going to find that you've got the U.S. and Soviets, or I always say Soviets, right? I'm so old school. I always forget it's not the Soviet Union anymore, Jeff. It's Russia. It's the Russian Federation. There's no commies. I'm kidding. Just kidding. Well, they are still commies, but anyway, the U.S. and the Russians are kind of, I mean, there are units for them available in the game, but they are not the main focus of this game. So one of the cool things, I'll just kind of flip through here. As far as the rules themselves, they're pretty well laid out. There are a few that, not to say they're confusing, but they could have been a little more clarified on just like a couple of notes in here. There is one thing that it would have been nice to, and I'll show you when we get to when I'm kind of explaining how you play. It would have been nice to have had a little better reference sheet. Not to say that these are bad. You get a couple of these; they're actually pretty nice, and it's good cardstock too. It's not real flimsy. Sometimes you see some games like the player rate is almost a piece of paper. No, that's not the case here. But there could have been more information on this. The counter info and the action step info, I don't know. The counter info, personally, I think could have been left off, because once you understand how the counter information works, you pretty much have everything under control. Anyway, but just a tiny little critique as far as that goes. But what I was going to say, one of the things that I think is really, really cool about Armageddon War is that it's got a very interesting, excuse me, interesting kind of campaign through the scenarios. There are 15 scenarios in this, and a lot of very interesting aspects to it. For an example, your first scenario is basically ISIL and Jordanian rebels. Well, rebels plus with Jordanian forces. Very kind of unusual, right? You don't run across those kind of games, right? Those kind of game scenarios. It's one of the reasons why I think this is such a really unique war game, is just the subject matter itself, right? It's not sci-fi. It's like I said, it's near future. The technology is mainly from the 80s to current technology. There are a few U.S. units that are available. There are, obviously stuff that's being worked on at DARPA. It's not part of our armed forces just yet, but for the most part, it's all current tech, or even 80s tech, because you have to keep in mind that ISIL and different rebel factions are involved in the game, and of course they don't have cutting-edge weaponry. They purchase all this secondhand stuff, broken down junk, and I'll actually show some of these things off too. So yeah, first thing to point out with Armageddon War, and I'm gonna have to bust out my good old Lego Batman. It's like a candy jar that I use for chit pulls, because this is a chit pull system that's utilized in Armageddon War. We've seen chit pull quite a lot. It's become much more of a thing in the past, I'd say, 5 years in war games, as opposed to, back in the old days. Chit pull would be like, what? I like chit pull games. Some people don't like chit pull games. I dig it because the I go, you go, especially in war games, right? The I go, you go has kind of gotten pretty worn out in a lot of designs. And one thing that Armageddon War is not same old, same old. But you've got a chit pull system, of course, the different units, formations, they're called formations in this, will have a certain number of activation chits that you're going to put into an opaque container. And then, of course, you're just going to pull each chit, and then the units of that formation will get to activate. And the units get to do pretty much, essentially, they're going to move and attack. And, or, a combination of that. They're, that's not all, but that's, pretty much the standard. So, effectively, once you pull a chit for your faction, you get to do everything with all those units for that faction. It's not, oh, you get to move X number of units. Because sometimes you'll see games where, gosh, and for some strange reason, I want to say Knight of Man is popping in my head. But maybe I'm wrong. Knight of Man, if I remember correctly, that has the chit pull. But, and of course it's science fiction, but still really cool game. Really enjoyed it. But if I remember right, you couldn't move all your units when you pulled your chit. You only had a certain number of units that you could activate during that phase, that chit pull phase, during that activation phase, whatever you want to call it, during that turn. This is not the case with Armageddon War. So whenever you pull a chit for your faction, all your units are going to move or be able to do things from that faction. I can't, well, I guess I could pull it a little bit. Let me move this map a little to kind of give you an idea of one of the unique aspects. I'm going to push this stuff over. The reason is because it's on the edge of this board. So on the edge of this board is our track. There aren't like actual turns in Armageddon War, which is another thing that makes this really cool, very unique. Now here I'm holding this box top. Let me move the box top. Grab a quick sip here. So what'll happen is you'll play a scenario, and there's more to this, right? I could flip it over and it's going to have 6, 7, 8, 9 on the other side, right? On the other side of this map. Then we see the 10, the 20, and the 30. So what'll happen is you'll play a scenario, and the scenario will say, okay, well, you've got 14 activations or 16 activations or 25 activations. And what you'll be doing is you'll actually, let's say, for an example, I just have this for like the first scenario, the kind of learning scenario. You would have 4 chits in your container. You've got 2 which are for the rebels, as well as the Jordanian kind of like ragtag Jordanian freedom fight. Well, no, I don't want to say freedom fighters. I don't want to say mercenaries either, but they're not actually. It's not the Jordanian army. But anyway, and then against ISIL. So you would reach in. Okay, so you're gonna pull out your chit, right? So this is one of the factions for ISIL, and you would put it down right there on the 1. Okay, and then the ISIL player, yeah, he's gonna do his stuff. Then you got your next player, your next pull, I should say. This rubber thing's coming off of here. Anyway, pull it out, and it'd be like, okay, well, the rebels get to go. All right, so the rebel player activates, moves, attacks. Then you reach in, get the next one. Let's say it went rebel, and then the ISIL faction. Now, what'll happen, and this is kind of an interesting aspect too, is next, you're going to take all the chits except for the last one to activate, put them back in. All right? Boom. Now you reach on in. Oh, look. Okay, so it's the rebels. That would go on 5. Then we go pull out a new one. Okay, then we got the rebels again. So they were going back to back. So this would actually go on to the 6. And then you've got the 1 chit left, and this would go over onto the 8. And then you would just collect all of these back up again. So really, there's an aspect where you're gonna one faction is going to actually lose an activation or not get a chance to activate. But now we'd be at 8. If this was the whole board, we'd be at 8. Well, then we would go 9, 10, 11, and we would mark the 10 here when we get to the 10th activation. And then, as I said, say it's going 14 activations, that would be the end. So when the 14th chit gets pulled, you're going to play that, and then that's going to be it. You're going to total up your victory points. So it's very unique how there's no turn. Even in most chit pull games, there's a turn, right? So you're going to go, okay, well, I pull, and then once all that's done, all the chits have been pulled, then we take all the chits, put them back into the container, and then we may have some upkeep to do, some house cleaning at the end of the turn, and then we're going to go back and say, okay, now we're on turn 2, and I'm reaching in and I'm pulling out my activation chits and so on and so forth, which is cool. And I do like chit pull because I like the kind of chaos where you're always sitting there going, okay, well, who's gonna move next? Oh man, I gotta kind of plan, what's gonna happen if I have to sit and wait to get my activation for my units, my forces and stuff like that. I like that aspect. I like the chaos, because as opposed to, oh, well, I get to do this on my turn, and then you get to do this on your turn. Although I do like having to kind of put together a long-term strategy in games, I do like just the randomness of the chit pulls, because that does present a good amount of chaos on the battlefield. So I dig that. I really like that. So, okay, let me bring this back out here, because I'm going to kind of zoom in, and I'm going to actually put on my reading specs here. So I'm going to kind of show you, I'm going to zoom on in, there, that should be good. Kind of show you some of the aspects of the counters, right? So the different units. So I have included some US units here just to kind of give folks an idea. Although you're not, it's later scenarios that you'll see the Russians and the US actually involved in any way. But you're going to find on each of the counters, that's going to indicate right here, what is the nationality. So we've got like rebels right here, rebel militia, that's ISIL. You got the US, of course we've got Soviets. God, I did it again. I said Soviets, Russians. Russians. Anyway, so we're going to see that's going to indicate what's the nationality. Then this is going to show us, okay, so what faction is this? So what are we looking at, right? So this is the 369th Armor. Then below that, it's going to tell you, okay, so what is this unit? Now this is tactical level, right? So these are infantry or platoons, and the armored vehicles and wheeled vehicles, the hard and soft targets, those are individual vehicles. So here we see that this is an M1 Abrams. Then if we look down here, this is going to show us our firepower and range. So this yellow 7 showing that at regular range, this is going to have a firepower of 7 with a range of 8 hexes. And if memory serves me correctly, I want to say each hex is 150 yards? Pretty sure. I think it's 150 yards, if I remember correctly. So anyway, so we've got 8 hexes. Then we see this is the movement allowance. So it's got a movement allowance of 9. And this letter here is just going to tell you, okay, so what kind of movement method does this utilize? So it's showing a T. That means this is a tracked vehicle. Just like for an example, here we've got the I that's showing that that would be infantry. And we've got the W up here, which says that means it's wheeled. Then we show the armor that's on for the unit itself. And then we're going to see a shield behind it. Now, one of the... Oh, I should also point out we've got these little lightning bolts along the side, too. So lightning bolts represent kind of 2 things, really. It's going to represent, one, the technology level of the equipment that this unit is utilizing. So, of course, we've got, we've got a red lightning bolt because the U.S. is using very modern equipment. Now, the Abrams is not, not a brand new tank. The Abrams has been around for a long time, but of course, it's gone through various different revisions. Whereas here for ISIL, we're seeing a green. So red is the best, black is pretty standard, and green is poor. So this basically means that the equipment's fairly poor, plus the training. That's the other aspect that kind of will tell you why these colors are what they are. So of course this is effectively, if I hold this up so you can get a really close look, and I love these counters. These counters are big and chunky. I love the big chunky 1-inch counters that many of the Flying Pig games utilize, because for one, as you can see, I'm wearing reading specs, but even if I'm sitting like this, right, take this reading specs off, I can read that counter. I can read that counter. I know what that counter says. Whereas, some of the really small half-inch, 3/4-inch counters sometimes, it's like, I'm sitting there like, what? What is that? As my hat blocks off the shot there. But, yeah, so for an example, this is basically just a pickup truck with a gun mounted in the back. So, so that's one of the reasons why you're seeing that this has the green, and these actually correspond to the dice we're going to utilize, and I'll be showing you that in just a sec. So anyway, there's a few more things that you got to take a look at, and this is where things kind of get a little tricky when you're first learning how to play. But after a while, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. So you have to look at the colors here. So you need to look at the color. So you're going to see this is a yellow 7. That is a red 3. And you also see behind it, there's like kind of a splash, like a, you know, like an explosion behind the 7. That also is important too. So the thing is, what you look at is you're looking at, for the main weapon here, right? So for the Abrams here, the 7 is telling us that this is actually the main armament, obviously enough, is anti-tank, anti-armor, hard targets. That's what it's best suited for, attacking those. Now, if we take a look here, we see that the shield behind the black 1 is indicating, well, okay, so this is an armored unit. So if it's yellow and yellow back, that means, yes, this is the full extent. The armament on this vehicle for that unit, what have you, is designed to attack that sort of target. Same with the infantry. So if we look at the infantry here, we see that that is a red 3. It's got a range of 1. And let's take a look here. If we take a look at the 136th Infantry, it's got the red shield with the black 1. So that means, yes, that if you're firing at this, see, this unit's firing at this unit, right? So they've got a range of 1. Red, that means, okay, cool, nothing's going to change. That, yes, that this is, you know, anti-personnel, right? That's what these weapons are for, is for anti-personnel. Now, the little splash behind is basically showing, okay, so the secondary weapons are basically set up to attack. So, for an example, the Abrams has, you know, their anti-personnel weapons, right? Machine gun. And that's going to show, okay, so the red here matches with the red here. Not that they'd be attacking them, they'd be attacking these guys. So we're looking at here, it's red. So you're still going to use the same firepower number, so it's not, you're not going to have to sit there and bust out all these different, you know, unit cards and all these charts and things like that to be like, oh, well, you know, they're attacking a quarter-ton truck or half-ton truck, so that's a little bit different than... No. So what you're going to do here is you'll actually... normally you're going to take that and halve it. You're going to take the firepower and you're going to get half that firepower. So that's fairly easy. Now, one other thing I should point out, too, is, especially on the U.S. units, you're going to see, whereas, say this right here, we see the black 1. That just says, okay, that's the armor. It's got armor 1. Now, if you see it where it's in the same color as the shield, right? This is saying this is improved. This has improved armor. So, which is going to lower the basic attack for anything that doesn't have anything that's attacking with anti-armor, right? Just means it's got I forget, the Abrams has all the different what the hell, they're like the armor oh shit, off the top of my head I can't remember. I know what I'm trying to say. I think folks out there, yeah, the modern tanks are way different than the old school tanks, right? The old school tanks, like World War II tanks, are all like, okay, well, here's your armor, it's sloped armor. With modern tanks, they all have like these like special anti tank aspects to the way the armor is and things like that, and try to like muffle high explosives and all this different stuff. Anyway, come on, I was never in the military, I'm just saying. But yeah, I'm not like a tank engineer. All you basically need to know is that having that yellow on yellow means, yes, it's good. That's good. All right, so we're going to talk about some dice. Let's zoom out a little bit. Zoom out a little bit so we can kind of talk about dice. So, as I mentioned, we've got the 3 different lightning bolt. So we've got black, green, red. Now, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to be utilizing, oh yeah, so I get all red. Oh yeah, I get all black, or oh yeah, I get all green. This is basically trying to represent is, so for example, the technology of the tech level of the Abrams is much higher than the tech level of the BMP-2. So if he's attacking here, well, there's going to be a bonus involved in that. Whereas if they're attacking here, then they're going to be at a disadvantage. So effectively what you do is, the easiest way to break this down is you're going to start off with your black dice. So what this basically means, this represents fairly ineffective fire, I guess we'll say. Sporadic fire. Or maybe even a unit that's undersupplied, right? So that's the green. You don't want to be rolling green. Then we got the black. The black is pretty much normal. This is the standard. Your attacks are always going to, regardless of what you're doing, what the units are that are attacking or defending, they're always going to start off with black. So this represents different hits. So like I said, this is the standard. Then red, the red dice. The red dice represent intense fire, right? Very highly accurate and effective fire. That's what the red dice represent. So what you're going to do normally, and there are, of course, various different factors involved. I'm just kind of giving you the easy way that you start off. So for an example, let's move these out of the way. Just for a sec. Let's kind of do this, right? So let's say that the Abrams is attacking here. So we have 7 firepower. So that's basically 7 dice to start off with. So you got 7 firepower, and you're looking at 1 armor. So you would subtract that, right? So you're going to subtract that. That's pretty much the first thing you're going to do, right? You're going to take a look at, okay, what's my attack value and what is the armor? Then you're going to look at the various different modifiers. So you're going to see offensive dice quality, right? So first you've got 2 things you're going to be looking at every time you're attacking, right? You're going to be looking at number of dice and the dice quality. So this is where people might run into just a few kind of bumps in the road when they're first learning how to play, because you got the number of dice and the dice quality, and they're completely different. So for an example here, you're looking at, all right, so this is attacking here. We've got 6 dice. Then we're going to say, okay, so if the unit had moved, we're going to lose dice. If depending on the terrain, we could lose or possibly gain dice. Tech difference, retreat. Are we at close range, long range? Is this counter fire? Are we doing combined fire? Are we doing flanking fire? All these different things are things that you're going to have to calculate. But it's, once you start playing it, you understand it. So, let's say, for an example, let's make life much easier, and let's just take a couple of infantry units. Let's say we got the ISIL versus the Rebels. Okay. Zoom back in a little bit, just a touch. Okay, so we see we've got firepower 3. Yep, so we got red on red, so we're cool on that. Oh, hey. John's kicking in. Sorry about that, man. I'm so busy talking. Good to see you, John. Big 1-inch counters are great, relatively easy to read. This game made me pause on play of ISIS. Yeah, you know what? That is something I'm going to talk about too. The game is made up of Future War. Yes, that is correct. That is something in my closing thoughts about the game that I am going to mention. So just kind of, look at this. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the gameplay. And yeah, I am. I swear I'm actually going to kind of speed this up a little bit. But anyway, just kind of giving you an idea, right? So we would start off, we got 3 dice. Range of 1. So we don't have to worry about anything there. So right here, we got the armor 1. So you're looking at, okay, so you're down to 2 dice. Then you would start looking at, okay, well, they're on the same tech level, so there's no change in the quality of the dice. The quality of the dice are going to stay the same. Even though we're seeing that it's green, we don't necessarily have to make the change, right? So you always start off with the black dice. Whereas if it was something like, let's say they were black and they were green, you're gonna drop down the quality of dice. So sometimes you're gonna be rolling different colored dice. So you might be rolling some black with some green. You might be rolling some black with some red. You might be rolling all one color, and it's all just comes down to what you end up calculating from the various different factors. So, like I said, to start off with, it's a little confusing maybe for some people, but once you've played a few times, you'll be fine. A lot of it'll just come old hat. It's some of the stuff where it's like, oh, the little splash color is yellow, so that means, okay, they got yellow there, and oh, wait, so we're looking at, oh, so it's improved armor. That kind of throws some people a little bit. But like I said, the rules themselves are pretty well laid out. I really didn't have a whole lot of trouble figuring stuff out, reading through the rules. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, I can see, trying to figure out number of dice and dice quality will kind of maybe throw some people for a loop. So that will slow down your first few playthroughs of the game. But anyway, so you would basically be rolling your dice. So if we take a look at the dice, so we see we've got hits. So we got that little mark there, that pip there is a hit. So that is a hit under any circumstance. Then we see we've got these 2 shields because there is counterfire in this game. These shields represent possible hits if you're performing counterfire. So you've got 2 hits and you got those 2 shields and the rest are blank. So of course, if you roll a blank, no hits. But when we look at the black, now things are changing, right? So we got a hit, we've got counterfire, another counterfire, hit and possible counterfire. So if you were counterfiring, this could be 2 hits. So you're gonna get something. Every face has something on it. Even though, for an example, if you weren't counterfiring, that'd be considered a blank. Then we look at the red, and it's like, whoa. Okay, so we got 2 hits, and then we've got, if you're a counterfire, possibly 3. Once again. So, rolling the red dice, you're going to get more hits. So, what happens with this? So, with most war games, if you were to do a hit to a unit, it's either removed, or if there's step reduction being utilized, you're going to flip it over, right? So it's going to be, they're less effective, right? They've taken casualties. Maybe the units are breaking. Maybe some of them are skedaddling and things like that. Then, of course, if they take another hit, they're out of the game. I mean, that's pretty standard for most war games. Well, here's different. In Armageddon War, it's different. we've got these action steps, which are these arrows that you're going to actually place underneath your counter. Now, let's scoot this up here so you can actually see these. Although I gotta admit, this blue counter here, which is shaken, that's like the worst state. A little tough to read the black on blue. So I'm not sure what that was. Who went with that decision there, because it's not easy to see, but the thing is, they're all the same, right? The really interesting aspect is just the number. That's the main thing you're looking at, is this number here. So, for an example, let's say these guys moved. Well, they move over here. They moved into position. The rebels moved into position so they could attack. So you're going to have this counter underneath your unit. Right there, we know it's a -1. It's going to be a minus die because they moved. Same thing if they were sitting there, they don't move, but then they attack, right? So then they attacked. And it's going to tell you this, it's easier to read it off the pinned, right? So if they're pinned, it's showing, okay, can't fire, can't use opportunity fire, and you can't move because you've already done that. That's what you did. Now you can still counterfire and engage in close combat, but you're going to have that negative modifier. It's once again, it's all about the dice. You're going to get a negative modifier there. So when you first move, you're going to end up putting that negative, right? When you attack, you're going to put that negative. And it, like I said, the action state doesn't necessarily mean that you're taking losses or anything like that. It's just the cohesion of the unit is being affected. It could be, your ammunition levels or, anything like that. So that's your first step. So when you take a hit, when any unit takes a hit, say for an example, these guys were sitting down here, and they hadn't done anything yet. Well, they take their first hit, they're going to take this. They're going to get that, right? Next hit, so let's say they've got 2 hits on them. Now they get the -2. Now they're pinned. Okay, let's say they had 3 hits on them. Now they're shaken. The 4th hit is what's going to reduce the step. So you have to actually get 4 hits on a unit before you reduce it. Takes the 5th hit, it would be removed. Now what'll happen is at the beginning of your activation, you're going to automatically gain 1 level back. You're going to gain 1 of the action levels back. So you go from, let's say, if you were shaken, now you go to a pinned. Now you're a -2. Now this can change, as it's not always just get 1 back. So you'll get more back if you're no longer in range of an enemy unit. You'll get 1 back if you happen to be not in the line of sight to your enemy units. So you can actually go from being, say, pinned to just going back to normal, right? So one of the cool things is as you're fighting, as you're getting these negative modifiers, that's one of the reasons why that chit pull becomes so important, because you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, okay, so maybe I'm the rebel player. It's like, oh, come on, bring pull my chit out. Let this formation activate so I can attack with them, because right off the bat, I'm going to get 1 step removed, 1 of the action steps removed. I thought that is a very, very cool, very unique aspect of this game, where unlike most war games, for the most part, it's like, oh, you attack and you hit and boom, you got step reduction, 2 hits, you're gone. Well, not with these. We got the different action steps. Then, of course, if an armored unit or a vehicle unit is destroyed, you're just going to mark it as a wreck. Just like so. kind of funny because you've got a stacking limitation of 2 units. So it's kind of interesting when you might end up with just like that. Nothing confusing, right? You don't have to worry about it because, once again, because they can't move, they didn't move. Now, it is possible, it's in the realm of possibility that you could have a situation where you've got a unit that's a -1 and then a fresh unit moves onto it. So you gotta, even though they won't be together, you gotta kind of do it like this. You gotta kind of break it down where, okay, taking a look, because it is possible to have 2 different action step counters, or one has a counter and the other doesn't. So pretty easy, but most of the time you're going to find that stack units are going to both have the same exact action counter on them. So another thing that I thought is very, very cool, and now I'm not even going to bring out all of them, because this is tactical level. You've got a variety of all different kinds of support weapons. So, for an example, got a light machine gun. So it's showing us that it's an extra firepower 1. It's infantry, and it's got a range of 2. But if we flip it over, it's a completely different support weapon. There are loads and loads of support weapons. I thought this was really cool. So, here we go, anti-armor. And then we flip it over, and all of a sudden, it's like a missile. Or, rocket, I should say, not a missile. So, so right there, see? So it's going to show that that's a vehicle-launched weapon. We've got Predator drones. So that's pretty wild. That's what the blue is showing here. The blue is showing that this is an air unit. Just like so. Yeah, so I mean minefields. We've got IEDs and so on and so forth. So everything's based on victory points in the game. I'm gonna back out. Whoa, as I zoomed in, duh. So anyway, everything's based on victory points for the scenarios. Now, one thing I thought was pretty cool with the scenarios are, it's not just, oh, well, destroy so many units, this unit has a value of whatever, and that's how many victory points you get. Sure, that makes up some of it, but that's not all of it. A lot of different aspects for victory points. I mean, there's one where it's basically just ISIL and the rebels, and you're trying to get this convoy out. It's basically like a presidential candidate or the president. I forget which one it was. And they're trying to bug out, and they're being attacked, all the way up to pretty standard, some U.S. troops, as well as Russian troops. I almost said Soviets again. So a lot of different stuff in this, and you can have, the first basic learning scenario. You're looking at, you got 4 faction counters that you have to worry about, whereas as you start getting into bigger engagements, you may have a bunch of different faction counters that you're pulling out to activate the units. So I really dug the various different scenarios for the game, because, like I said, there are 15 different scenarios. And you'll see, here's one of the cool things. Don't always see this, but oops, too far. In the first scenario here, it's going to say, okay, here are the new rules that are introduced. Formation markers, movement, fire combat, counterfire, close combat, support weapons. There's our setup, tells us what our forces are, and it shows us the points, and we do get a breakdown. that'll tell us if you want to create your own scenarios. This is how to figure out the point values of the different units. It's like so. Plus, of course, you got the point values of the support weapons, things like that. So it's going to tell us, okay, so here's the rebels, here's ISIL, scenario length, special scenario rules, victory conditions, different tactics, which is important to understand because the tactics you're going to have to utilize playing Armageddon War is not going to be like your standard, oh yeah, well, this always works in, say, Advanced Squad Leader. No. But I like how they actually go, okay, so hey, scenario 3, we're going to add offboard artillery. We get to, like, say, scenario 5, indirect fire and drones. So as you're playing this, and this is like a campaign, right? So, right there. Scenario 4, this is the one I was talking about. The assassination attempt. So, no. ISIL official, that's what it is giving a speech, and then there's an attack, and they're trying to get the official out of there. I don't know, do they really have officials? I don't know about that. But this is a pretty interesting scenario too. I mean, like I said, there's 15 different scenarios, and it's just kind of, everything just kind of like starts ratcheting up in it. So we finally get to the point where it's the Soviets and the U.S. Damn it, Russians and the U.S. going at it. So very, very cool. I really dug that. Once again, as I mentioned, we've got the player aids here. So I do want to point out as well that we do have some extras that are available for Armageddon War, because honestly, I can see this being a very core system for Flying Pig Games. If people can get past the fact that one person has to play as ISIL, right? So there's a strategy guide available. It's kind of cool. Kind of, saying, okay, well, this is what's going on. If you're U.S. troops, if you've got Russian troops, these are things to keep in mind. So I guess this is kind of stuff that was maybe kind of left out of the rule book so that it wouldn't be super, super long. Because, as a wargame rule book, this is not long. But for someone who's, looking at just stepping into a wargame for the first time, from regular, say, standard Euro-style board games, you're going to be like, what the? I'm used to like 8 pages. What is all this? But, once again, you're not looking at having to do all these combat resolution tables and figuring out odds and stuff like that. But, so we've got that strategy guide. Then we got the 600. So the game itself, the core game, I can see you can easily play this solitaire because, keeping in mind, you're pulling chits. You're activating your factions by pulling chits, and of course, you got to kind of do a little bit of, multiple personalities when you're doing that. But as long as you're running the enemy realistically, what you would do in that situation should be fine. We got the 600, which is a campaign for Armageddon War. So we've got this with new scenarios. So we got another campaign. We've got Alone in the Desert, which is a solitaire expansion that's for Armageddon War, with more counters, deck of cards that's going to actually be utilized as well. So anyway, so we've got that. Then we also have another expansion, Burning Lands. So we've got new enemies. So now we start getting into Hezbollah. Oh, I forgot. Israelis are in this. Stupid me. Forgot to mention that. So we've got Hezbollah and Jordanian troops are added into the mix as well. So this is another big box. We've got another map in here also. So like I said, there's a lot going on with Armageddon War from Flying Pig Games. This is not just a release where it's like, oh yeah, well this is just the one game that we're bringing out, and that's going to be it. So, kind of like Night of Man, which I really liked Night of Man, and I was like, oh wow, I'd like to see some more stuff come out for Night of Man, but no, we haven't seen it. At least, maybe some new units, some other scenarios, stuff like that, because Night of Man is pretty cool. Off the top of my head, I swear, Night of Man's counters, I think, are even bigger and chunkier than this. These are 1-inch counters, and I want to say, I seem to recall, Night of Man's counters are 1.25 inches, I think. So, I know, people are like, what the hell are you talking about, man? I don't care about Night of Man, man. I don't care about Night of Man, man. I want to hear more about what Armageddon War. So, what do I think of Armageddon War? I like it. I think it's very cool. I think it's very different. It's unique. I had to laugh because we've got the dice with, which, I mean, this is not unusual. We got the dice with the, well, some are blanks, some are hits. They're utilized, dice like this are utilized in other games. In fact, right off the top of my head, we were just playing Betrayal Legacy coming out from Avalon Hill, which I have my review copy sitting right here. I just can't share it with you until November 9th. That uses dice like that with, the different, there's like 1 or 2 pips or blank. So kind of similar, little similar kind of dice, but that's not a war game. We don't usually see these kind of things in war games, just like I like the action step aspect of it, where you really have to effectively combine your forces, really, especially when you're playing like the Rebels and with ISIL as well. You really got to try to flank your opponent. You really got to combine attacks, because a lot of your stuff, a lot of your weaponry is just garbage. But I find that kind of interesting too. I like that aspect of it. But like I said, I like it where it's not just a step reduction, like boom, 1 hit, which is standard stuff, right? Okay, first hit you take, everything is halved, right? Except maybe your movement factor, but or maybe armor. But usually it's like your attack is halved, and then you take another hit, and boom, that unit's gone. No, there's a lot more going on as far as actually eliminating your opponents, especially when you're playing Rebels in ISIL. Gets a lot more deadly when you start looking at the Russians and the US, or the Israelis as well, because their equipment's more top-notch. Another thing I liked about it is that each of the scenarios are not just cut and dry, just destroy whoever destroys the most units, or if you just eliminate all the other defenders, units, and things like that. There's all different stuff. There's because there are urban areas on the board, on the map. You have things where you've got battles going on in an urban area or a populated area, and you have to be careful, because if you're rolling too many hits, there's collateral damage, right? You're getting civilians killed, and the populace is not going to appreciate that, so you lose victory points. There's a lot of wrinkles to the different scenarios that I think is very, very cool. Only knocks, real small critiques I have. Once again, I don't know. I like big boards. Yeah, that's cool. I still wish they were a little more modular. Basically, because sometimes you're playing a scenario and it's just taking place on a smaller portion of the map, right? So it's a smaller portion of the map that things are going on, but then you have this big old map opened up. Now, I understand, because you got to track the different activations on the tracker there, but you still have this big map. So, it's minor. Plus, like I said, there are also a couple of aspects in the rule book that weren't super, not necessarily that they're not clear, but they leave a little bit up to interpretation, which in a role-playing game, that's fine. You know, in a family game, yeah, that's fine. In a war game, not so much. Because, you know, the wargaming community is full of rules lawyers. I should know. I was one. But, you know, you can go online. There's FAQs. There's Board Game Geek. Things like that. I have to ding a game for, like, if things aren't real clear or exactly, you know, just completely all in line as far as the rules. Simply because I kind of look at it like if you bought a video game, right? And it was really buggy. And, you know, maybe it would crash sometimes when you're playing it. When you're doing a review of that, you're going to take that into effect. Now, a month from now, after they have a bunch of patches come out and they fix different things, sure, the score would change, but that's not what was originally presented, right? So it's like, okay, I'm reviewing what's in this box. So, but I'm not dinging this hard. I really, really dig this. And like I said, I think Armageddon War could be a serious flagship for Flying Pig Games. But here's the rub. As someone who played a lot of World War II games, a lot of times I got shackled, is actually a good word for me to utilize, as the Germans, right? It wasn't, oh yeah, I want to play the Nazis. No, because obviously anyone in their right mind is not going to agree with them, you know. But, I mean, there are people who like to play the Germans because of the various different weapons and the command structure. And yes, everyone who was in the Wehrmacht was not a Nazi. Everybody who was fighting in that war for Germany wasn't a Nazi. In fact, a lot of them were actually captured Poles and Russians and Czechs and things like that. They weren't Nazis. But in a situation like this, where in the core game you're looking at one side is ISIL, you're looking at in Burning Lands, one side is Hezbollah. Kind of a tough sell. There are going to be players out there who are going to say, nah, I know I'm interested in this game. This game system looks really cool. I certainly do not want to have to play effectively terrorists. It's not my bag of tricks. So I understand that. I'm not knocking the game for it. I'm just pointing that out. That, you know, it's one thing when you get to the point where you're playing scenarios where it's the Russians and the U.S. Yeah, okay, whatever. If you're a war gamer from back in the day, you've been playing World War III in Eastern Europe in the 1980s for decades, right? The hypotheticals. It's a little bit different. So I do want to point that out. I think some of the audience that would be drawn to this system and really like this game might be turned off because of the combatants that are involved in this. That said, I think it's a very good game. I think it's an excellent game overall. It really is. On a scale of 1 to 10, I gotta be honest, I give Armageddon War a 9.1. Seriously, I mean, the game is that good. Once you get the rules down, it moves along very quickly. I like the activations. I like how it doesn't have just the standard, okay, on your turn, you do this. Okay, here's your upkeep, here's your action phase, here's your house cleaning. No, none of that. Now, there are things that you do every time you activate your factions. You know, you're going to, like, remove the action step and things like that. But it's not based in that whole, like, okay, this turn, all this stuff, rinse and repeat. A lot of flow, a lot of chaos. I really, really dig that. So, like I said, overall, I give Armageddon War a 9.2 out of 10. You really owe it to yourself to check it out if, as John P. has mentioned here in chat, if you can get past the fact that one of the players is going to have to play as ISIL unless this is kind of a saving grace for you folks. Although it is an additional purchase, you can pick up the Solitaire supplement. That's an idea. But right out of the box, yep. All right, so that is it for today's show. On tomorrow's show, it's Thursday, RPG Day, but I think what I might be doing is I might be doing a review of Dungeon World. It's a PDF that I'm reviewing, though, so that's gonna be a little odd. Plus, Dungeon World isn't like super like overflowing with tons of art. I mean, there's art in it, and it's been out for a while, but it's something that I'm really enjoying digging into. So I believe that's what I'm going to do, unless something radically changes, like I get, RPGs in the mail that show up today. But I think I'll be doing that, and then on Friday's show, I am going to actually kind of talk about how to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions. I am going to actually open up these starter boxes here, and I'm going to review the game. So, kind of, for it's a trading card game, right? Can't call it a collectible card game, because it ain't Magic. Alright, so that's it for today's show. So as I like to mention, if you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to swing over to thegaminggang.com for the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. Come on, by now you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. John says, thanks, Jeff. Great overview and look at the game. Also, thanks for pointing out Alone in the Desert. Yeah, Alone in the Desert could fly under people's radars. So that's why I wanted to point that out. Because like I said, a lot of people aren't going to be like, yeah, I don't want to be playing as ISIL. Anyway, back on track. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. I'll be back tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching The Daily Dope, presented by The Gaming Gang. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. And if you dig the channel, please subscribe. If you'd like to check out our previous episode, click right here. And if you want to check out a somewhat randomly selected episode, give a click right down here. It'll be like opening a box of Cracker Jacks. You just don't know what you'll get. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'm Jeff McAleer.